there. Today, I would love to share a brief story with you about how I became a creative nonfiction writer. We have to rewind way back to the 90s when I was in high school. And I was taking a creative writing class with one of my favorite English teachers. And he wanted the class to enter pieces of writing into a writing contest for high schoolers that was sponsored by a university in Bradford, Pennsylvania. And there were three genres that we could submit work. It was poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction. At the time, I wrote both poetry and fiction, and actually had poetry published in our local newspaper. And I was working, I think, on one or two novels at the time, which I never finished, but I was giving it the old try. I was familiar with nonfiction in general, but creative nonfiction was not something that was on my radar. When I learned about it, that it was basically telling stories from your life, that was very appealing to me because there were a lot of stories I had that I wanted to tell about my life, and especially some of the challenges that I had faced and obstacles I had overcome. I decided to write a story about experience I had when my family and I moved to a new town when I was entering second grade. We had a bus stop where all the kids in town would walk to the bus stop, and that is where the buses will pick us up to take us to our respective schools. And I think it was the first week or so, my family walked me there just so I could get more comfortable. But after that, I was on my own. And so I would get up in the morning, make my breakfast, get myself dressed, walk myself to the bus stop. Mind you, I was 6 years old at the time. I turned 7 shortly after school year started, which I think even of my own children doing that at ages 10 and 12. And it's kind of unfathomable to me to imagine them doing that. It was the 90s. Well, actually, no, this would have been the 80s. So yes, it was very much a different time. And I experienced bullying at that bus stop. There were these two boys who would chase me around and say, "We're going to get you, little black girl." And obviously it was terrifying for me. And I decided to write a story about that experience. And I was very nervous about sharing it because I had never told that story to anyone. And I wasn't sure if the writing was any good. I wasn't sure if I told the story well. I wasn't sure what people would think about the experience. I have never been one to write about my adverse experiences in a way that portrays me as a victim of some sort. I truly believe that God has used every negative thing that's ever happened to me to bring glory to his name and to help other people on their journeys. And I will share a lot more about that in future videos. So our teacher sent in our writing, and we would not find out the results until we attended the all-day event that the university was sponsoring. We all loaded up on the school bus, went to campus, and spent the day attending workshops and listening to people do readings from their work. I already had ambitions to be a writer and an editor and a teacher, and all it did was further reinforce that that was what I wanted to do with my life. I'll never forget the moment we were sitting in the auditorium and they were announcing the winners of the contest. And when they got the creative nonfiction, instead of announcing who won, they would actually read an excerpt from that person's writing. And I'll never forget the moment sitting there in the auditorium and the faculty who was reading started reading my piece. And I'm at a loss of words even now, thinking about it and remembering it, because it was just this moment of elation and validation and excitement. All of my classmates and my teacher were just like, Amanda, that's your piece, that's your piece. And they were all so excited for me. Oh my goodness, all these years later, 30 years later, I'm still, wow. Yeah, sitting here talking about it for the first time in a long time, really, it's really reminding me of why I do what I do, and being so grateful that God has never allowed me to deviate from the calling that he put in my life as a writer, and to tell my stories in a way that's authentic and meaningful, and in a way that by his grace might help other people on their journey as well. Once I got a taste of success as a creative nonfiction writer, how could I ever turn back? I just knew in that moment, I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. I would continue to write fiction. Fiction was my first love as a reader and as a writer, and it always will be a part of my writing and editing life. But Yes, once that creative nonfiction ship sailed, that was the beginning of the end of that for me. So that is the story of how I became a creative nonfiction writer. And that journey obviously continued because I did end up getting an MFA in creative nonfiction, and I wrote a draft of a memoir, which is unpublished, and I continue to publish other personal essays and memoir pieces, and I will speak about that in later videos. But today I just wanted to share a little bit about my origins as a creative nonfiction author. And I feel that there's so much value in all of us writing stories about our life, even if no one else ever sees them other than us. I know from personal experience how beautiful and how healing that can be for us as individuals. If you have a story from your life that's on your heart, I encourage you to put it down, even if you get paralysis when you sit to try to handwrite something or sit at the computer to type it out. Just speak it into a microphone, tell the story in your phone, just record the story somehow, whether in an audio form or a visual form, and just know that getting that story out in the open will bless you and can also be a blessing to others if you choose to share it. So I pray that God is with you this day and always. Thanks for being here.